People who have seen someone get fired on the first day. Why were they fired? I worked in a chemical plant as QC. To make it short, I was one of the chemists who checked if the products were good enough to leave the plant. A guy working in production came for his first day. He took his break and lit a cigarette next to a 10,000-liter acetone tank. He was out before I could even blink an eye. Next story. Was in the local Walmart needing to take a leak. Walked into the bathroom to a manager and the employee staring down a stall covered in crap. The manager was explaining to the dude that cleaning crap is in the job description, and the guy responded, "Well, I'm sorry that it's my first day, but screw that," and walked out. Next story. Homeboy was allowed to play music on Bluetooth for the restaurant on the first day. Went to the bathroom, started watching adult content, forgetting he was still on the speakers. Hilarity and dismissal ensued. Next story. On my first day at Target, another new hire jokingly jumped into the cardboard compactor, and his boss sent him packing instantly. It wasn't on or anything, they just have a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to that stuff. We'd been on the job for less than an hour, so he made something like $6 total while working for Target. OP, I don't think you had to reassure us that the compactor wasn't on. Otherwise, I don't think his boss would have been what sent him packing. Next story. I hired temp for data input. Her first day, a guy pulled me aside and said, "She can't be here." Apparently, one of our full-time employees had a restraining order against her. I sent the employee home and apologized, then called her agency and told them she wasn't welcome back. Not sure what the order was for, but my guess is stalking. Next story. I was working at a large-scale architectural firm in the Bay Area in 2004, and they hired a guy, and after his orientation and paperwork, he finally gets to his cubicle. The first thing he does is put his headphones on and blasts death metal, Cannibal Corpse. It was so loud that everyone can hear, and that's him using headphones. However, that wasn't what got him fired. His first work item was to write a company-wide email that said Debbie Harry of Blondie was responsible for 9/11 and wrote about 30,000 words for it. I have never seen our HR manager run out of her office so fast. Next story. Dishwasher. First day on the job. Went on break and went to the bar next door. Took a while to come back, so chef went and found him. We needed a dishwasher bad, and he was actually pretty damn quick at doing dishes, so chef gives him a second chance. Second day, goes on break again and stops at 7-Eleven. Gets a tall boy of Mike's Hard and starts drinking it right outside the back door. We have a picnic table right outside for staff to eat and smoke at. Chef finds him again and fires him on the spot. Sad part is my chef probably wouldn't have given a crap if he was always drunk. It was the fact that he didn't even try to hide it. Next story. I worked in a kitchen and a new guy came in. I asked him to grab something from our cleaning supply storage, which was in a shed out back. He was gone for a while, so I took a look at the cameras and he was smoking a blunt while peeing in the shed right next to the cleaning supplies. Next story. I was bartending at a sports bar in Hell's Kitchen. New guy training first day. Supposedly several years of experience. He attempted to shake a Jack and Coke and, of course, covered the bar in his mess. Didn't come back for day 2. Next story. My first day was also the first day for another dude who showed up an hour and a half late. After being there for about 15 minutes and sort of starting helping me do the very first task we were assigned, he gets pulled into an office and fired. On his way out, he's walking past where I'm still working and he says, "They fired me for being late. I can't believe it. Do you think you could give me a ride?" I laughed out loud and sheepishly said, "Sorry dude, I'm kind of working right now." He thanked me anyway and walked out of the building. He accidentally did me a big favor because so many of my new coworkers saw that interaction and thought it was so incredibly hilarious, we all immediately became friends to talk about it. Next story. Fighting with a customer by getting in their face and yelling at them. The idiot thought the company owed him loyalty for being an employee. Oh boy. Wait until he learns. Edit. For clarity, this guy was 100% at fault. He was damaging an item the customer bought. The customer politely asked him to be more careful, and that was all it took for the guy to snap. Next story. Our town's prick mayor forced his spoiled prick son to get a job at a restaurant where I worked. On his first day of training as a host, the kid sat in the waiting area looking at his phone instead of standing behind the host stand greeting customers. The trainer tried to sort him out a couple of times, but he'd just greet one customer, walk them to their table, then go right back to sitting. The manager came to talk to him and the kid sighs and says, "I can't do this." and heads for the exit. They told him if he was going to walk off his shift, he shouldn't bother coming back, and the kid just waved on his way out. He only lasted a couple of hours. Next story. Warehouse job right out of high school. Guy started hitting on the young lady that was our supervisor, and when she let him know that wouldn't fly, he started in with the hardcore, sexist, misogynistic BS about how she couldn't possibly be good enough to be a supervisor of men, among a lot of other crap. He was gone before lunch. You know, isn't it so strange that the people who are so aggressively trying to get with women also seem to just hate them the most? What's going on there? Next story. I've worked at a daycare for the past 15 years. One girl that got hired got fired within 1 hour by calling the babies things and screaming out stuff like, "How do I shut this thing up?" Or, "God damn it, these things smell so bad." I kicked her out of the classroom after 10 minutes of thus. I much rather have been by myself. And she was found laying on the break room table playing on her phone. I never saw the HR people get to my center so fast. Next story. New hire called in on the first day of orientation. Tells them she can't start work until next week. Quarantine. The day she was supposed to return to work with a doctor's note. Worked a couple of days. She called in again and said 2 weeks before she could come back to work. Hurt her back. She worked the first 2 days after her leave was up and called in the next day saying it would be another week before she would come back to work. At that point, they had reviewed some security footage for law enforcement, unrelated, and caught her stealing. Not from the company, but from another employee. She was fired. 2 days later, her husband shows up to surprise her at work with a homemade dinner. Boss has to deal with it. Apparently, she was telling him she was working a lot of hours for the last month and a half. That is not how you want to find your partner lying to you. Like, don't get me wrong. There are worse ways. But this guy shows up with a homemade dinner? Man, you deserve better. Just straight up. That's so sweet, dude. Next story. Worked as a chef earlier in my life. Dishwasher guy walked into the stockroom and I literally watched him pull a bottle of like $2 cooking Merlot under his apron and walk out. I grabbed the exec chef and we confronted him. He says, "I wasn't stealing it. I was just going to drink it." Exec left to get security, hotel and casino, and he runs past me with a knife in his hand, grabs the bottle, uses the knife to shove the cork in, and pathetically drinks about 3/4 of it. When he was done, he stood up, all seeming proud. I held out my hand and he put the knife in my hand, which I handed off to the other dishie. Then I put my hand back out and he gave me the bottle. I lightly bopped him on the head with it and said I hope this rancid crap was worth it, and then stepped aside as security dragged him out of the pit. They asked, "Police or just toss him?" I answered, he lost his job over a $2 bottle of wine. Just let the guy go home. Next story. He got drunk at a company-sponsored happy hour and tried to convince some of his new coworkers how cool it could be if they could, and then proceeded to describe assaulting another employee at the event. It wouldn't have mattered who it was, but the icing on the cake was she was the VP of marketing. And once again, I'm horrified that these people just simply live among me. Drunk or not, just terrifying thoughts to have and share with people. This isn't some random intrusive thought you've got nothing to hide behind. You shared it with other people and said it would be cool. I personally think it would be cool if you were removed from society. Next story. I worked in audiovisual for large corporate events a long time ago. We had a helper from another location help on a big conference. He criticized everything from the moment he walked in. After his shift, our boss chewed him out. He cried on his way out the door. Then he forgot his car keys and had to come back in. He wasn't fired, but he never came back to our location to help again. Next story. Dude got a job at a Fortune 250 company as a direct report to a direct report of the executive committee. Was likely at least a $500,000 job. After his first day, he takes his team, about 30 people, out for drinks and apps. This is kind of a no-no as it's going to be significant company expense and the company is trying to cut back. Still, this isn't anywhere near enough to get him fired, just a weird choice. He ends up getting blackout drunk and harassing 2 female employees on his team, asking them to sit on his lap, putting his arm around them. His behavior was recorded via phone. Next day, he has a meeting with HR and was terminated. Next story. I got fired at the end of my first day of work at a small gift shop in a national park. Apparently, I was supposed to show up for my first day of work knowing the entire product line, where it was on shelves, how much it cost, and where everything was in the storage room. The other employee, who was the golden girl and had worked there for 3 years, refused to help me learn and spent most of the day sitting out back getting high. The kicker was, the owner had spent the entire day upstairs watching the security cameras to see how I was doing and knew the other girl wasn't there doing her job. On the plus side, the owners of a nearby restaurant had been in the shop and we had chatted while I was trying to find them the items freedom that they wanted. They hired me to work reception in their place because they figured that if I could still be pleasant and chatty while having an awful day, then I would be perfect to greet their customers. It ended up being a good summer. Next story. I worked in security for a hospital, and this guy comes in and asks where to meet his supervisor because he wasn't familiar with the building yet. Everything was checking out, but we make sure everyone goes through our weapons screening system. The dude didn't really think anything of it, but his backpack alerted our system. It was at that moment the guy realized he had something he should not have. I'm honestly surprised he told me this, but he said he forgot he had his disassembled rifle in his backpack. The dude quickly leaves the building, and every time a firearm entered the building, we have to report it to our supervisors. After receiving the report, our supervisor quickly rushed down and started checking cameras, trying to find out where he went, and escalated it to our HRO and our chief security officer. Apparently, the guy never came back. But we did confirm with the supervisor that he was supposed to meet that it was indeed his first day on the job. It was a military backpack, so I'm assuming he was former military and just forgot it there. But after this whole incident, my supervisor smiles and says, "Well, this was his first and also his last day here." Crazy to think someone can just forget it in their bag, though. It seems more likely to me that he didn't forget it was there, but more forgot that it would be a big deal. You know, if he is ex-military, carrying around firearms is probably par for the course for him. That being said, it sure is one hell of a way to learn a lesson. Sorry about the job, man. Next story. My first job for me at a bank. Just finished training, 3 days, and come in for the first real day of work, and a guy who'd been training with me showed up absolutely plastered. I don't mean hungover. I mean rancid. 100% still crap-faced. I didn't know him that well, don't remember his name, but he didn't appear to be a party type of guy or anything over the last few days. He showed up on time and everything. He didn't even get a chance to put anything in his cubicle to clear out. Our direct manager told him to go to HR immediately for his termination, and that was that. I still don't get the logic that was going on in his head. If he got like that, just don't show up. Make some sort of excuse or something. It's a bad look to miss a first day, but it cannot possibly be worse than the option he took. Next story. Mortgage company 2017. A manager hired in from outside, not an internal promote. Meets his team. I'm on it. Probably only 4 or 5 people at that time, but one of them is a very well put together lady. She's younger than me, and I'm younger than the manager guy was. She was super sweet and in no way interested in any office romance, let alone a guy probably twice her age. Literally, at the first meeting, right after she introduced herself and said her name, he responded with, "Wow, you're a looker. We should smash. You'd like it." And then he 100% gave the rest of us a Michael Scott look, realizes what he has said is awful, but we just have to marinate in the silence that followed. The victim left the room quietly, told the district manager in the next room over what happened, and the new guy was fired immediately after his welcome. Once again, dude, what possessed you to say that? There is absolutely nothing wrong with seeing someone and being like, wow, they're really attractive. That's sweet, you know? But not only did you comment on her looks as, I think, her superior, which is, you shouldn't do that, but we should smash? Brother, what's wrong with you? Next story. First day at McDonald's, and they stole $20 from the till because they didn't bring lunch that day. Was so dumb, because we got free meals on our lunch break. And then at a nail salon, they said they had experience certificates and had been nominated for a national award for their nail art. Couldn't even do a basic manicure, and got frustrated and screamed at the manager when she questioned them on it. Next story. We were in a meeting with our IT team and a few execs. We had a new guy, and our manager introduced him and asked him to tell us something fun or interesting about him. He told a 5-minute story about blacking out at a tailgate party at his party school. I don't think anyone told him the 30-year-old guy across the table was our very serious CIO. Next story. I was working at a bookstore in a small town, and they hired this guy to be a bookseller/cashier. On his first day, he asked if he could set out a stack of zines that he and his buddy made together about the environment. I didn't read it, so I don't know specifically what it was about. The owner of the store said, sure, why not? So he put out a little stack. We later learned that he had no work experience, did not like to read books, and he just spent the whole day trying to sell his homemade zines to customers. He did not return to work after that. He also did not sell any zines that day. Man, you could just worked the damn job. Why try to sell your magazine? I'm not saying zines, dude. Why try to sell your magazine so hard? I guarantee you working the job and getting a salary or wage, I actually don't know the difference, is just more profitable. But hey, I bet he left that job and immediately tried to sell some more people some zines. Next story. I had a guy who was a temp, came from another site that did the same thing that we did, knew a lot, went through the process, got an interview to get hired on full time. They did their background check and the next day they walked him out. I don't know what they found. Even the cool people wouldn't say, but they walked him straight the hell out and then pretended afterwards he didn't even exist. Next story. Just dumbassedness. There's a really weird phenomenon in the welding trades from what I've seen. Some dudes will pass a weld test, then not be able to weld for crap once they're on the clock. I've seen people show up on day one and just screw everything up. Can't fit, can't weld, can't read a print, nothing. Part of the reason they even get hired is a lot of shops have the testing done by one of the people on the floor who still has their own crap to do. So unless they see obvious signs, they just pass anyone so they can get back to their work. The other part of the problem is management will very often ignore the recommendations of the testers and hire people they say should not be hired simply because every shop is permanently understaffed and management is just hiring anyone and praying. If you can actually fabricate and weld, a shop will pretty much hire you on the spot. I have never taken a weld test and not immediately been offered a job. Part of that is because I know what I'm doing. Part of it is because of management issues. Next story. I was a bartender for a day. Never got called to come back in. The issue was a customer reached behind the bar to show me how to make his drink. They knew I had no experience and my trainer left me there in the first hour to go outside and chain smoke cigarettes. The owner sat at the bar and watched me struggle and fired me for letting the customer help. I'm glad I got fired. Next story. I've had to fire 2 people for trying to fight people on the first day. One dude felt threatened by everyone surrounding him like he wasn't just sitting right next to our clock-in device. Started throwing slurs and trying to force in some reason to fight the only guy who wasn't surrounding him and just sitting down enjoying his lunch. The second guy wasn't following safety rules and got mad when someone called him out on it. He got into a screaming match with the guy, saying he's been doing this for longer than the other guy's been alive. He was a 20-year-old, talking to a 50-year-old man who'd been doing this work for 30 years. I realized he might be stupid and fired him. Next story. Guy was hired to be a truck driver for us, had a CDL already, got asked to take a drug test, and couldn't pass. For anyone wondering, if you have your CDL, you should already know that drug testing is very likely to happen. Also, if you're hiring people that need to pass drug tests regularly, maybe bring it up and don't wait till their first day to do it. Next story. I was working in a shop. Very basic shelf facing in the evenings before close. They asked me to show new guy how it's done. I then left him with a section to do while I continued on. Once no one was watching, he just stopped and stared blankly at it, like almost catatonic. It was a boring, low-paid, but very undemanding job, but the time would still go by way faster doing it than just staring at nothing. And he didn't seem stoned or anything. I didn't see him after that evening. He looked like a young Charles Manson though, so I was happy enough to not see him again. Next story. Worked in a kitchen when I was in high school. This guy starts at the same time as me, opening the place. He was told to go out and cut fries for later that night. The place was really laid back and management didn't really care what you did as long as your work was done. A few hours later when dinner rush comes, there are no fries. I don't know what he did for nearly 5 hours, but not a single fry was made. Owner then clues in and fires him, not for not cutting the fries, but he was also caught stealing money from the till by a camera. Next story. This girl walked in her first shift with blue hair. Where I worked had a pretty strict hair, makeup, and piercings dress code, and she had been told at her interview. This is where she'd had brown hair, and she was told about the strict rules and had signed a uniform policy form. This was almost excusable, but she just made it worse from there. During her training in another area, I was working close by and she turned, interrupting her trainer to tell me that I, another trainer, was doing my job incorrectly. She then asked if I'd like her to show me how to do it properly. I said, no thanks, and ignored her. She then complained to the other new girl about how rude I was, and how she, blue hair, would be my boss within a couple of weeks. What got her in the end was a rare visit from the owner, who is a no-nonsense, serious businesswoman with about 8 restaurants under her belt. She greeted blue hair, asked her how her first day was going, then very politely informed her she would need to fix her hair as it was against policy. This set blue hair off, and she started yelling at the owner that she'd read the policy, and there was nothing against blue hair, and she was an idiot who couldn't tell blue hair what to do. The owner just very succinctly explained who she was, that she could tell blue hair what to do, and that the uniform policy had been written by the owner herself. Blue Hair just stared at her. The owner took the trainer and the manager into the office. Blue Hair didn't seem concerned at all and joked about the promotion she was about to receive. They called Blue Hair in after about 10 minutes, and within 2 minutes, she was then marched out of the restaurant with her head down, never to be seen again. Next story. Those freaking bastards at Anderson, pre-Enron. Poor guy finally got his first big job and his mom was coming into town for dinner to celebrate. First in his family to graduate college, all that crap. Well, they had a client meeting over lunch and apparently at some point he got a splash of soup on his tie. Some high-up manager saw him and said, "Get that freaking slob out of here before a client sees him." Guy was bawling outside the Minneapolis location off of 3rd Street. I bumped into him and got his story. Sadly, I've seen worse, but the fact that his mom was coming down, I parked him at the IDS building lobby and made a few calls. Needless to say, none of us were happy about it, but a few calls were made and I crap you not, we had him a new job and a pay bump, apparently before his mom met him that evening. In all my years, I've never seen a group of effectively random strangers come together like that to help someone out, and just a general mutual hatred for Anderson. Big thanks, apparently, to, God, this was 26 years ago. But I want to say it was a joint effort between a Target exec at the time and someone over at Robert Half that made some seriously fast freaking calls. I want to say it was Excel, well, I think it was still NSP at that time, that picked him up. Don't know what happened after that. Hope things turned out well, but at least Enron happened and a little justice happened in the world. I want to say his name was Brandon, Ben. I think it started with a B. Looked a little like Woody Allen. Next story. Worked as the cashier who helped train the new ones on how to use the register. They'd usually done the computer course first. Worker didn't know the English alphabet at all, nor could they understand written English words. Kind of necessary to work the store's internal catalog. HR did some digging that day and found out the hiring facility was using interpreters to do the online classes. That day we lost over 10 new cashiers. Next story. My first job was working at a concession stand. The owner was pedantic and labeled a ton of equipment that needed no explanation. Microwave, register, oven, etc. I thought it was dumb since all staff spoke the same language fluently and added a label to everything in the room. Soda machine, broom, cup, ceiling, floor, wall, so on, so on. I was called in the next day and told I should find a new line of work. Next story. Not the first day, but because of the first day. The dude randomly threatened to end me. Just introduced myself and literally the first words out of his mouth were, "I'm gonna end you. I'm gonna slice your neck with this." Then shows me a metal scraper. Then when I was at the supply closet, he just took off my hat and tried to play with my hair. When I pushed him off again, he told me he was going to end me. I wrote a complaint against him and luckily I had witnesses, so he was fired. I was later told by a friend of his how mad he was towards me, but luckily I never saw or heard from him again. But OP, maybe he was just mad at you because he could see the future and he knew you would get him fired. Wait a second. This seems like some weird time loop thing. Next story. I briefly worked as a temp staging new cars for local delivery at a port, and since the facility was secure, the keys were left inside the cars between being moved off the ship to where the truckers would pick them up, or the longshoremen would load them onto rail cars. A group of new hires were brought on board, and at the end of the day, the manager addressed them to say they all did a great job, and asked to see if anyone had any questions. One guy pulled handfuls of car keys from his pockets and asked, what do I do with these? Keep in mind that the remotes had not yet been programmed, so the only way to figure out which key went to which car was to try every single one by hand. He did not come back the next day. Next story. I was a call center manager for a nonprofit. Lots of college students, lots of retirees looking for something to do, but the work was important. I hired one such college student who had a great phone interview, a great in-person interview, and so we gave her the job. Told her the date of the next training class. Start time is 9 a.m. She said, "See you there." Done and done. We get to the date of the training and I peek in on the class and, well, I noticed she's not there. She goes to the university that is literally 2 blocks north, so I give it a bit, circle back around, still not there. I peek my head in while folks are working on paperwork and I ask the trainer if they've heard from her. No dice. So I gave her a call and she says, "Oh, yeah, sorry. My RA told me I had to be at dorm meeting this morning, so I'll be there later." To which my reply was, "My recommendation for your next job is that you actually show up on time. And if you can't, that you call your employer and let them know in advance. You are no longer employed with us." thanks. Was it a bit harsh? Maybe. But my RA says I have to is not a valid excuse. It's a lesson she needed to learn. Next story. Print company didn't like me as their current printer operator because I wasn't fast enough. Ignore that I was the only printer operator with 6+ industrial machines and graphic designer. They hired a new guy with a lot of printing experience under the guise of helping out, but the writing was on the wall. I was 100% training my replacement. He spent the entire day complaining about how our processes and our flatbed printer was ancient, refused to work our paper printer that was beneath him. They tried to reason with him and he wouldn't have it. Demanded the shop to spend $100,000 on a newer, modern flatbed so that he can actually work. Suddenly, after firing him, they didn't have an issue with me anymore. I do my job, despite how stretched thin I was. Could have had someone much, much worse. These jobs do not know how good they have it until they actually try to find someone. Or even fire the person and find someone else. They realize, ooh, that last guy was keeping a lot of things together, huh? As the new guy just screws up over and over again or complains or whatever. I'm not saying that companies are always right or even frequently right, but this is something they get wrong constantly. Next story was at my first day of training. It was supposed to be a class of 8, but only 7 showed. The department manager came in and asked where the missing person was, to which the trainer said they didn't show. Manager went in the hall and made a phone call asking them where they were. Manager came back in the room a minute later, said they asked the missing person where they were they running late, etc. Missing person said they had applied at a different employer and they were hoping to get a call from them. Then they asked the manager if he still wanted them to come in today anyway. Manager told him, nah. Next story. I actually had to fire someone on their first day. They showed up and immediately put their 2 weeks notice in. They thought that we'd just keep them on and spend money training them for a position they didn't intend to keep. I didn't feel good about it, but I was just the assistant manager in a crappy corporate cafe job. So that's one way to get let go on your first day. Next story. I used to work for a company that hired a journeyman from the union hall to work for them. On the first day, he's late to his orientation because he sat in his truck in the parking lot expecting someone to get him, but the company looks past it and gives him paperwork to fill out and the address to go take his drug test. He is also given the foreman's number to call after he finished the drug test. When he finished it, he called the foreman and said the day is pretty much a wash and he's going to call it, to which the foreman said there's still 4 hours left in the workday. He can still get some stuff done. He refuses to show up and says he's just going home and he'll be there tomorrow, to which the foreman says if he doesn't show up that day, he won't have a job tomorrow. The guy then starts calling the company and berating the front desk people to transfer him to the owner of the company. When the owner talked to him, he went off on the owner, started calling him racial slurs. The owner told him he can show up to the shop to pick up his paycheck because he isn't going to be working for his company. And if he tries to get into the building, he'll have the cops called for trespassing. When the guy showed up, he tried to apologize, saying he was going through some things in life and he really needed this job. But the owner just gives him the paycheck and the union hall kicked the guy out of the union. Next story. This was at an oil change shop back in the day. New guy was encouraged by the manager's nephew to smoke weed out back on the afternoon shift. He was a referral from his buddy who was there for 2 weeks. All 3 decided to smoke weed out back since they thought no one would find out. They got high and cross-threaded an oil filter, spewing oil all over the shop, and messed up a customer's car. Little did they know, the owner's daughter ratted them out. The manager came back mad and fired his nephew on the spot, saying how disappointed he was, and said to the new guy, "Are you for real? This was your first day. You're fired." Then his buddy got fired. The next day we were short-staffed. Honestly, the manager was more mad that he had to come back in and fire his nephew for his stupidity. The new guy was a moron, and so was his buddy. Next story. I worked for an ambulance company as an EMT. The kid was training on the first day and would not get off his phone and showed no interest in being here. We had just gotten a new ambulance and all of us on the crew were excited to try out the new truck. This ambulance is big, but one thing that our mechanics do is put on top of the gas cap, "Gasoline only." First thing in the morning, we get to the gas station and have the rookie at least to do something. So we tell him to gas up the truck. We give him the company card, tell him the mileage on the truck, and he starts fueling. My partner saw he was putting diesel in the truck. We were all mad because now the new truck is out of service and we have to use another crappy ambulance and restock it. Long story short, my supervisor fired him before lunch. Next story. Day 1 for a brand new transfer driver. He pins a trailer to his truck to then bring it from its center down to the repair shop. For reasons beyond me, he activated the emergency brake on the trailer. He drove all the way from the center to the repair shop, roughly a 3/4 of an hour drive, with all 4 wheels on fire and multiple cop cars and firefighter trucks chasing after him. He pulled into the shop and was completely surprised, like he had no idea what had just happened. That was his first and last day. Constantly surprised by the lack of awareness people have when driving. These are the people next to me. The guy who doesn't know that the trailer behind him is on fire, or, more accurately, the wheels are probably sparking a whole bunch, I don't know. But seriously, man, I am terrified to be on the road. Next story. Worked at a call center with very strict timeliness rules. The first week of training, you weren't allowed to be late 1 minute. Some guy walked in on Monday like 5 to 10 minutes late, and they asked him to leave. No grace period. 1 minute was late. If you had more than 3 lates in the first 90 days, you were let go. I don't agree with this mentality, but needless to say, 20 plus years later, I'm very prompt. Always early. Next story. This just happened today. My ex-boss had been fired from my company for sexual harassment, including me, personally. He then got hired into a contractual role that would have him interacting with my team. He had never informed his contracting company of the previous issue. Dude was stopped at the door when he tried to walk into the building under his contracted role, and his entire organization was banned from ever doing business with us again. Score 1 for winning a harassment case. Next story. A girl who wanted to be a physician's assistant came into the hospital as a rehab tech to get her patient care hours. She refused to enter patient rooms if they were smelly and gross, let alone help us turn or wipe up people. Yes, you have to clean people up as physical and occupational therapists. If we just walked away, it would be A, inhumane, and B, we wouldn't see anyone and would end our productivity. The only people who escape shoveling crap in the hospital are doctors, but they have their own crap to shovel. Next story. Used to work in a brewery. Guy got fired for drinking milk in the bottling room. It was actually more complicated. The owner saw him selling weed on his lunch break, but the milk thing was also bad, but not as bad on paper. They wrote down milk on the paperwork. This was around the time they were trying to get loans for expansion and stuff, so I'm sure that played a part. Next story. I was working as a valet for a hospital. We hired this older guy who was kind of weird, but seemed pretty chill. Later that day, he asked us if the hospital gift shop inside sold cigarettes. Obviously, they did not. So the guy literally ran to a turkey hill about a mile away to get some. Our boss was told this happened and was perplexed that this guy actually just left like that. He came back and our boss talked to him about not leaving the job like that. The guy told our boss to suck his butt and was fired the same day. Gotta love those summer part-time jobs. Maybe cigarettes were sold at hospital gift shops at some point in history, but nowadays, I would be astonished. And also a little scared at the efficacy of that hospital. Next story was an RA in college. Duty is rotated until we get everyone together and schedule. First time this girl is on duty, 7 o'clock rolls around and I get a call from another RA. Hey, have you seen Madison? No, check the duty office. It's locked and no one's there. We call her, she doesn't answer. That's a big no-no. Much worse than not being in the office on time. I go down and take over and we hear nothing all night. Turns out she and her boyfriend had gone out of town. The RD went absolutely ape crap, which isn't something that happens often in residence life. Next story. We had to scan some archival slides for the State Museum. We had to wear special gloves and handle them only by the edges. We asked the new guy to help us mount them on the scanner. He didn't wear gloves and grabbed them by the middle, leaving his oily fingerprints on them. Though the museum said they were priceless, the company settled for I think $10,000 and the guy was fired the next day. So his actions the first day led to his firing on his second day. Next story. Nurse here was coming off of night shift. The day crew was coming in. One of the day shifters had a trainee who had previously worked at the facility many years ago. He had told her he just needed a refresher. They agreed he would go pull the morning meds from the Pyxis medication dispenser and they would pass meds together. He, lost a patient's meds after he pulled them out. After some searching by everyone, he returned to the Pyxis to pull the same meds again, and he lost them again. He was escorted out by security, was on the clock for an hour. This guy needs to get some tips from Dr. Langdon, you know what I'm saying? Maybe like 20% of you do, and hey, that's good enough of a ratio for me to make a joke about it. Next story. This doesn't answer your question. In fact, it's kind of the opposite of your question, which is why I bring it up. I once started a new job as a security guard, and we had a dude who would take the patrol vehicle out for hours at a time, turn off his radio, and just touch himself in the car before returning. He was caught cutting his fingernails and toenails in the car. He overdosed on pain meds in the bathroom and never showed up on time. He kept working there for months before he was found pleasuring himself in the bathroom by a building director who immediately pulled some strings to fire him on the spot. This dude screwed up 100 times in the span of 6 months and kept his job. Unbelievable. Next story. Guy's first day at a company also happened to be their summer party that afternoon/evening. He got hammered, called his boss a, quote, queer, the boss was actually gay, and pissed off the office balcony. This balcony was many floors up in a populated city downtown. People below definitely got a shower. Well, he sure showed he knows how to party, I guess. That probably wasn't in the job description though, was it? Also, anytime water droplets come from the sky and I'm walking downtown or anywhere with high buildings, there is the thought in my head of, I wonder what that liquid is. Thanks, OP, for reinforcing that fear. Anyway, that's the last story for today. I would like to thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.